The dreaded phone call is the title of this video. What does one do when they pick up the phone and they receive the worst news imaginable? How do they respond and how do they react? But more importantly, how do you respond and how do you react when you are 6,000 miles away from home? That's what I'm going to cover in this video. Well, I suppose the genesis of this video, the dreaded phone call, started over 3.5 years ago. I was at home here in the Philippines when my sister called me. It was when COVID was winding down. The mandates and the quarantines were still in effect, but lightening up. I could leave the Philippines and come back in. It was one of the first couple of months that was allowed to happen. And she called and told me, you know what, Paul, I don't mean to sound like a negative Nancy. I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but Dad just got out of the hospital. He had COVID. And right after he got out of the hospital, he slipped and fell and hurt his hip in the garage. And on top of that, his cognitive abilities are in pretty rapid decline. He's entering into dementia or Alzheimer's. And I just thought I'd throw that out there at you and let you know what was going on. And her name is Marcia. I said, thanks, Marcia. And I thought it over for 24 hours, talked to my wife, and we both agreed it would be a great idea for me to make the trip, as grueling it was going to be, and go see my sister, go see my father, and on a side trip, go visit all my kids. And that's exactly what I did. So I stayed with my sister for a week. I observed her in just chronic, relentless pain. She had hurt, I don't know how many places of her back, her neck. She had fallen down a number of times. Her bones were very brittle. She's always suffered all of her life with arthritis and other kinds of maladies. And I could tell she was in a constant state of being uncomfortable at best. And relentless, unrelenting pain is horrible. I went through it for a couple of years back in the late 90s. Mine was corrected by surgery. Hers never got corrected. So, you know, I felt so much empathy and sympathy towards her and how she tried to put on a brave face while I was there. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I went to go see my father every day, sometimes twice a day, when I was there to go see him and her both. And when I went to go see him for the first time, I'll never forget when he spotted me and I spotted him. These two big shit-eating grins just broke out on our faces, and we went and embraced, and it was just great to see him. He felt great to see me, because we've always been buddies, fishing buddies, golfing buddies, you name it. We're more like friends than father and son. And I had the wonderful opportunity to sit and chat with him. And I noticed, however, that the dementia was really beginning to progress. And I remember how almost humiliated he was the first hour we were talking and getting caught up. And he looked at me and he said, honey, he says, forgive me for this. I said, what's that, Dad? He said, do you have children? I said, yeah, I have 3. He said, what are their names? And I told him. And I saw a light come on once I said their names. And he wanted to know all about each one of them. So I told him. And then every day that I went to go see him, he would ask me the same question. You have kids, right? And I mean, yeah, I have kids. And him and I, actually, on one day that he was super lucid, made a YouTube video together. It's on my channel. If you look down my playlist and you want to see it, there he is. And you wouldn't know he had any problems in that video. But I kid you not, 5 minutes after we completed it, he went right back to where he could remember what he was wearing and what he was talking about and where he was when he was 17 years old. But he didn't know if I had any kids. I guess that's just the bane of dementia or Alzheimer's. Those old time memories come to the forefront, I suppose, and the new memories or recent memories are buried somewhere. So that was 3.5 years ago. And I got back and I thought, I had mixed feelings because I was a little pissed off because he wasn't sick at all. I mean, he was sick, but it wasn't at the edge of death like my sister had portrayed it. And that wasn't intentional. She was just trying to bring me into the loop. But I was more irritated with the system, the COVID system, the pandemic system, where every time I got on a plane or off a plane, I was at risk of failing one of these swab tests, which I must have taken 6 of them. And if I failed one, boom, either not getting on the plane going back to where I was coming from, or I was going to get quarantined. And neither one of those was a very attractive prospect. So talk about stress. By the time I finally got home from that trip, I was never more beat up in my life mentally and physically. However, I look back on it now, and through that grueling trip, which at the time was somewhat of a false alarm, turned out to be one of the biggest blessings of my life. And that's sort of the moral of this story. Today is September 12th. On August 9th, my sister passed at the age of 75. 28 days later, on Sunday this week, my father, at 100 years old, he finally passed. And I didn't see the point in me going back to attend a memorial service without the ability to speak to the person again prior to them being laid to rest. Just to go for a memorial service, I didn't think it wasn't about the money, and it wasn't really about the travel. I feel that my final trip was completed 3.5 years ago. And what a blessing it was to have that conversation with my father and to have that conversation with my sister. Now, 28 days prior to my father passing, when my sister died on August 9th, I asked my nephew, I said, hey, is Grandpa, is he cognizant? Would he know me? Would he know what's going on? And he said, no. He says, I go over to see him, and he sort of knows me, but he sort of doesn't. He says, if you showed up, he would know that you were someone he knew, but he wouldn't be able to place you. And that sort of sealed the deal for me. When my sister passed, if I knew in my heart of hearts that I would be able to go and have one last conversation with my father, it was too late for my sister. If I could have that last conversation with him, I would have gladly made the flight. I would gladly have rented the car, rented the hotel room, since my sister's place was no longer available for me to stay at. And you can always make the money back, but you can't buy the time back or the conversation. I didn't see the point in going for a memorial service with a bunch of people that I really didn't know. Some of my sister's friends that I really don't know that well, if at all. And the same thing with my father, some of his neighbors, some of his old buddies that I may or may not have met. And I know he wants his ashes to be spread in certain places, Canada, this golf course, that golf course, because him and I, we used to play golf at all these places, and we used to go to Canada, and we used to go fishing together. And those are the memories that I remain so close to my heart. And I understand he wants his ashes spread in the places where he found the most joy and the most happiness. And if anything defines my father, it was the pursuit of joy and happiness. He taught me that lesson. Seek that which makes you happy and that fulfills you. This is not a video to make you feel bad that I've lost a couple of loved ones. My sister lived a full 75 years. I think that her death was most likely one of the best things that could have happened. And before you call me cold-blooded, please understand that I know she was in torment for several years, at least 5. And on the phone calls that we've had over the last year together, her and I, my father I couldn't talk to. He wouldn't know how to make a phone call or receive one, or who I was if I called him. But my sister, many times when we talked, she would say, and we talked maybe twice a month, she would say, you know, Paul, with this pain, this nonstop pain, no sleep, it takes me an hour just to try to go to the toilet. I can't drive my car anymore. Hell, I need a man to come over here every day for 6 hours just to help me he gets my groceries for me. And he says, I'm just helpless. I'm no longer human. Sometimes, Paul, I wish this would just end. I'm in constant pain. She says, I'm living in my own little slice of hell. And she wasn't complaining. She was just relating. And I could relate to it because in the late 90s, I had a similar issue with 2 blown discs in my neck. And I lived with that kind of pain for 2 years. This woman's been living with it for upwards of 10 years and is progressively getting worse. So on August 9th, when my sister Marcia passed, I think that it was simply her time. She had 75 years on the planet. She raised 2 beautiful children. Unfortunately, she lost one of her children to cancer, and I know that that affected her and saddened her. Her remaining son was an adoring son, is an adoring son. He's an adoring nephew. I'm blessed to have him in my life. The purpose of this video is to perhaps give those that are thinking about retiring in a distant land, like I have, doesn't have to be the Philippines, to think about what you would do, what would be your plans, your contingencies, if you were to receive the phone calls that I've received in the last 28 days. I know for a fact that if I still lived in America, and of course I would go. It would be a matter of hopping in my car and driving for 5 hours or driving for 24 hours or taking a short flight. Coming from the Philippines, not so simple, especially when I don't have a time frame. They still don't know what they're going to do with my sister. And they've yet to begin to make plans for my father. So I can't just leave my wife up and go and rent a hotel room and a car for a month while everything gets straightened out. There will come a time in the future. My contingency plan is next year I plan to fly back to the States and see my 3 boys. And while I'm there, I will make the trip to California and I will go visit my sister and my father, and I'll have that final conversation right then and there with the 2 of them. I'll see you in the next video.